Rachel Zegler, like so many kids raised on TikTok, she's all for infantada is the only global solution.
They are pretending like Rachel Zegler is the first of them all when she looks like Lord Farquaad in the film.
I wanted my money back. It was very disappointing.
So she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
The Snow White version is woke and feminist and progressive.
This is just so typical of the left. The progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive.
The new Disney boss babe, who is Rachel Zegler, the inverse of happy.
They're leaning into woke. Hardcore.
They're petrified
Yeah.
of some kind of backlash. Of course, like with everything on the left these days, they just take it too far.
Nobody
Who
wants
wants
that.
a movie about true love? What kind of woman do we want out there seeking true love, Eliana? The outrage.
Now, I'm guessing that she's not married. I'm guessing that she doesn't have kids. The movie is a complete disaster, by the way.
It just doesn't make
Well,
any sense.
it makes a little bit more sense.
You can gaslight people so easily.
Yes.
So apparently, according to them and according to the writers of Snow White, women can't even want to be in love anymore.
So the two stars hate each other.
Snow White gets her name not from the fairness of her skin, as we obviously know. She gets her name from surviving a snowstorm.
Every way that Disney changed the story, it changed it for the worse.
Disney's Snow White remake isn't just a flop, it's a $250 million catastrophe echoing through Hollywood, leaving executives scrambling and fans in disbelief. This wasn't just a stumble, it was a full-on faceplant, a masterclass in how to alienate an audience and empty theaters faster than you can say bibbidi-bobbidi-boo. But was this spectacular failure inevitable, or were deeper forces at play? Did star Rachel Zegler's outspoken criticisms and perceived entitlement combined with Disney's radical, agenda-driven changes ultimately sink this once-beloved fairy tale?
Ever trusted a first reaction by anybody in the media? Please go look at the list of names of people who hyped this up as a good movie and make sure you never take their opinions seriously ever again.
The casting announcement of Rachel Zegler as Snow White was far from a celebratory moment. It was the sound of a cultural fault line cracking open. Immediately, online forums and social media platforms became battlegrounds. Whispers of woke casting morphed into outright accusations and unkind comparisons, some even mocking her physical appearance by likening her to Lord Farquaad from Shrek spread like digital wildfire. But the initial casting controversy was merely a prelude. The true tempest erupted with the emergence of interviews where Zegler didn't just embrace the role, she appeared to actively dismantle the very foundation of the 1937 animated classic. She openly denigrated it as weird and outdated, framing the original story as antiquated and irrelevant. She went further, even seeming to boast about how this reimagining was intentionally discarding the core romantic narrative, the very essence that had enchanted generations. However, the most incendiary element, the accelerant that truly turned simmering disapproval into a raging inferno, was the resurfacing of Zegler's politically charged social media activity, posts saturated with partisan animosity, including an explicit FT Trump message and a chillingly worded wish that supporters of the former president would never know peace, surfaced, igniting a firestorm of outrage. Even media figures known for their strong opinions weighed in, with Megyn Kelly famously declaring, "Fire this brat." Calls for a boycott of the film intensified, spreading virally across the internet. In retrospect, was this potent cocktail of perceived arrogance, open disdain for the source material, and politically divisive pronouncements the initial critical fracture point in what was once considered an unbreakable fairy tale mirror?
Hello, Disney. You're going to have to redo your film again because this woman is a pig and you fired Gina Carano for far less than this nonsense.
The cold, hard numbers from the box office delivered a brutal verdict. A disastrously low $43 million opening weekend in the domestic market against the colossal backdrop of a $300 million investment encompassing production and marketing. Disney, a studio built on nostalgia and fairy tale magic, had placed a monumental bet banking on the enduring appeal of Snow White, on Zegler's burgeoning celebrity, and on the ingrained enchantment of a beloved story. But what they received in return was not applause, but a deafening silence. Theaters remained eerily empty, devoid of the usual opening weekend excitement. No long lines snaking around the block, no palpable buzz in the air, just the stark, undeniable sound of crickets. Audiences, it seemed, had collectively stayed home. The post-mortem analysis commenced almost immediately, with industry experts and casual observers alike scrambling to understand the catastrophic underperformance. The hashtag #BoycottSnowWhite became a rallying cry online, reflecting the widespread sentiment of disenchantment. Social media platforms became inundated with expressions of fan disappointment, exemplified by tweets like, "She's the reason I'm not going, and I simply can't stand her." A prevailing narrative emerged, pointing directly at Zegler's perceived entitled demeanor and Disney's perceived heavy-handed, agenda-driven remake as the primary drivers of this cinematic collapse. Disney's calculated risk of injecting a woke sensibility into the classic, intended to attract modern audiences, had instead spectacularly imploded, leaving them grappling with a financial catastrophe and a significant public relations crisis.
I know that you've told me before that your version of Snow White is different, and it's more of a 2022 version of Snow White. What did you mean by that?
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story. With a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
However, the backlash extended far beyond mere personality clashes and political disagreements. The fundamental essence of the Snow White narrative itself had been subjected to a radical transformation. The gentle, heartwarming fable of a kind-hearted princess, a valiant prince, and a charming ensemble of 7 dwarfs, a tale cherished across generations, was seemingly discarded. In its place, Disney presented what numerous critics and disgruntled viewers characterized as a preachy, didactic mess, a film that bore scant resemblance to the captivating story that had resonated for decades. Rachel Zegler, in her promotional appearances, appeared not just to accept these alterations, but to actively champion them, even boasting in interviews with a tone bordering on triumphalism. We deliberately avoided that cliché love story nonsense. This version is all about her agency, her battles, her self-reliance. Yet, for a significant segment of the audience, this wasn't perceived as empowerment. It felt more like a forceful erasure of the very elements that had made Snow White so beloved in the first place. The iconic Prince Charming, once a pivotal figure in the narrative arc, was diminished to a near invisible presence, a creepy nobody flitting around the edges of the story. The evil queen's defining motivation, her consuming jealousy fueled by Snow White's unparalleled beauty, a central conflict in the original tale, was dramatically diluted into a nebulous and unconvincing power struggle. Romance, charm, whimsy, and the foundational magic of the fairy tale genre itself? Many argued that these crucial ingredients had been systematically excised, replaced by a heavy-handed application of contemporary values that felt jarringly out of place and fundamentally undermined the story's inherent appeal.
She continued celebrating herself by posting that she's in the #1 movie in the world, which is a remarkable thing to post when you are the laughingstock of an entire industry. This is what narcissism looks like. Narcissism for 200.
Even the musical dimension, traditionally a dazzling cornerstone of Disney's animated legacy, morphed into yet another battleground in the Snow White remake saga. The 1937 cinematic masterpiece had bestowed upon the world an enduring gift of timeless, instantly recognizable, and irresistibly catchy melodies like Hi-Ho and the poignant Someday My Prince Will Come. These songs weren't just musical numbers, they were integral to the storytelling. Deeply woven into the emotional fabric of the film, in stark contrast, the remake soundtrack was widely decried as a jumbled, disjointed mess and, in harsher terms, absolutely atrocious. Gone were the enchanting, memorable melodies, replaced by a collection of songs that many listeners dismissed as generic, forgettable, and utterly devoid of the classic Disney magic. Lyrics intended to be inspirational, such as the perplexing directive to just echo to manifest one's dreams, were met with widespread ridicule, labeled as nonsensical, vapid, and lacking any substantive meaning. One particularly scathing critique went so far as to condemn the new musical compositions as a revisionist Marxist call to arms, accusing Disney of prioritizing a heavy-handed political agenda over the creation of genuinely enchanting melodies and emotionally resonant storytelling. The ethereal beauty and timeless longing captured in Someday My Prince Will Come was, in this new iteration, seemingly supplanted by something that rhymes rather unflatteringly with dump truck. The saga of the 7 dwarfs devolved into a veritable comedy of errors, a protracted sequence of missteps, backtracking, and public relations blunders that further amplified the film's mounting controversies. Initially, Disney, in what seemed like a gesture of fidelity to the source material, announced plans to cast actual little person actors to portray the iconic dwarfs. This decision, initially perceived as a positive step, was swiftly derailed when Peter Dinklage, a celebrated actor with dwarfism, publicly voiced his strong criticism of the depiction. Dinklage argued that the portrayal, even with little person actors, perpetuated harmful stereotypes and reinforced outdated tropes. Disney, seemingly caught completely off guard and acutely sensitive to accusations of insensitivity, promptly panicked. In a dramatic about-face, the studio declared that the dwarfs would no longer be dwarfs at all, but rather magical creatures. Leaked concept art subsequently surfaced, revealing bizarre, unsettling images of CGI weird glowing things inexplicably performing Snow White's domestic chores. By the time the extensive and costly reshoots were concluded, the magical creatures had undergone yet another transformation, emerging as diverse bandits. A confusing, visually jarring, and narratively incoherent ensemble of CGI figures that managed to alienate virtually everyone. What began as a seemingly well-intentioned effort towards progressive casting, critics argued, had ultimately devolved into a clumsy and counterproductive exercise that not only erased the representation of dwarfism, but also effectively transformed beloved, uniquely identifiable characters into a generic, visually unappealing, and utterly forgettable CGI collective. The underlying irony was stark. In their frantic pursuit of inclusivity and avoidance of offense, Disney had inadvertently stumbled into a situation that many perceived as both more offensive and far less imaginative than the original depiction. The repercussions of the Snow White debacle continue to reverberate throughout the entertainment industry. Within the hallowed halls of Disney, whispers of meltdown are now circulating with increasing intensity, fueled by persistent rumors of impending layoffs and the indefinite shelving of previously ambitious remake initiatives. The film's abject financial performance has, by all accounts, deeply shaken studio executives, forcing a painful and perhaps overdue reevaluation of their creative strategies and their approach to handling cherished intellectual property. Disney's stock value experienced a noticeable dip in the immediate aftermath of the film's disastrous premiere, further compounding the sense of crisis. Rachel Zegler, despite possessing undeniable vocal talent demonstrated in West Side Story, now finds herself facing a chilling new label within industry circles: box office poison. Unsubstantiated but persistent rumors suggest she has been quietly dropped from consideration for a potential sequel in the Hunger Games franchise, with many speculating that her outspoken nature and the perception of a rude woke streak are proving to be significant career liabilities. Online, she's become an unintentional meme, a cautionary figurehead representing a fairy tale tragically capsized by perceived entitlement and a divisive agenda. In the aftermath of this $250 million catastrophe, the critical questions remain. Could Disney have somehow averted this disaster? Was the damage irreparable from the moment Zegler's casting and the radical script revisions were set in motion? Or was the Snow White fiasco ultimately an unavoidable perfect storm, a confluence of misjudgments, miscalculations, and a profound disconnect between the studio's vision and the desires of its core audience? While much of the criticism leveled against the Snow White remake centers on its perceived heavy-handed feminist messaging and the controversial casting choices, the accusations of a broader woke agenda woven into the film extend further than just these prominent points. Critics point to subtle and not-so-subtle thematic shifts in character portrayals that, they argue, inject contemporary social and political ideologies into a story that traditionally thrived on timeless, universal themes. The assertion that Snow White in this iteration embodies communist sensibilities by advocating for resource sharing with farmers, as mentioned in some reviews, might seem hyperbolic, but it reflects a deeper concern about the film's perceived departure from classic fairy tale archetypes. The portrayal of the dwarfs, even in their final bandit form as laborers being lectured on inner strength by Snow White rather than as independent, quirky characters, is seen by some as an attempt to shoehorn in class-conscious narratives. Furthermore, the consistent downplaying of male characters, particularly the prince, who is not only relegated to a minor role but also subtly denigrated, fuels accusations of a misandrist undertone. These elements, combined with the overt feminist revisions and the perceived lack of traditional fairy tale romance and charm, contribute to the broader narrative that Disney deliberately infused the Snow White remake with a modern, politically charged, woke agenda that ultimately clashed with the source material and alienated a significant portion of its potential audience. It wasn't just about updating the story for modern sensibilities. It was, for many viewers, about fundamentally altering its heart and soul to align with a specific ideological viewpoint. The immediate financial losses and the dip in Disney's stock price following the Snow White debacle are undoubtedly significant, but the potential long-term damage to the Disney brand itself could prove far more costly and difficult to repair. For generations, Disney has cultivated an image of wholesome, family-friendly entertainment, a trusted purveyor of magical stories that appeal across age groups and cultural backgrounds. The Snow White controversy, however, has severely tarnished this carefully constructed image for a substantial segment of the population. The perception that Disney is now prioritizing divisive social agendas over timeless storytelling, coupled with accusations of disrespecting its own legacy, has eroded the trust and goodwill that the brand has painstakingly built over decades. Beyond the box office failure, the fallout could manifest in diminished merchandise sales, particularly among core demographics who feel alienated by the film's direction. Family viewership on Disney+, a crucial revenue stream for the company, could also be negatively impacted if parents become wary of the studio's content choices. Furthermore, the controversy could cast a long shadow over future Disney projects, making audiences more skeptical and less willing to embrace reboots and remakes, fearing similar agenda-driven alterations. Rebuilding the eroded trust and restoring the Disney brand to its former position as a universally beloved source of family entertainment will require a significant and sustained effort, far beyond simply releasing more commercially successful films. The Snow White disaster may well represent a pivotal moment, forcing Disney to confront the potential consequences of alienating its core audience in pursuit of perceived relevance and ideological alignment. The Snow White catastrophe isn't just a Disney problem. It may well be a symptom of a larger crisis brewing within Hollywood regarding the relentless trend of reboots, remakes, and reinterpretations of classic stories. For years, studios have leaned heavily on familiar intellectual property, seeking to capitalize on nostalgia and pre-existing fan bases. However, the Snow White failure, alongside other recent underperforming remakes, suggests that audience appetite for these retreads may be waning, particularly when perceived as cynical cash grabs or vehicles for pushing contemporary agendas. The core issue, perhaps, is the erosion of audience trust. When studios are seen as prioritizing ideological messaging over faithful storytelling, or when beloved characters are radically altered to fit modern sensibilities, audiences become increasingly wary. The constant cycle of reboots and remakes, often lacking originality and genuine creative vision, can also breed fatigue and cynicism. The Snow White debacle could serve as a crucial wake-up call for Hollywood, prompting a much-needed industry-wide reckoning. Studios may need to reevaluate their reliance on reboots and remakes, prioritize original storytelling, and most importantly, rediscover the art of building genuine audience trust by respecting the source material and focusing on creating compelling, emotionally resonant narratives that entertain and engage rather than preach or alienate. The future of cinematic storytelling may well depend on Hollywood learning the hard lessons from failures like Snow White and rediscovering the magic of originality and authentic connection with its audience. Has Disney, in the wake of this monumental miscalculation, genuinely absorbed the critical lessons embedded within this $250 million cinematic stumble? Does the Snow White debacle serve as a definitive wake-up call for Hollywood, a stark and undeniable reminder that audiences at their core crave authentic enchantment, timeless storytelling, and genuine emotional resonance, not agenda-driven revisions, heavy-handed moralizing, and perceived disrespect for the beloved classics that shaped generations? Or conversely, are we, as viewers and consumers of popular culture, destined to witness a continued parade of cherished fairy tales relentlessly torched by smugly delivered agendas and fundamentally misguided attempts at forced modernization? What are your thoughts on this cinematic train wreck? We want to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share your perspective. Are you now apprehensive about what Disney or Hollywood in general might inflict upon the next beloved classic in their sights? Let's delve into this critical conversation together in the comments section, and make absolutely sure to join us tomorrow for another in-depth dissection of a major Hollywood controversy. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate that notification bell. You definitely won't want to miss what we uncover next.